where do we see ourselves 3 to 5 years from now? And that is a big question we don't ask ourselves enough because our vision is limited usually to a 12-month cycle. Most of us, our vision is limited to 6 months. And some of us don't even plan. They just go with the flow and week to week, month to month. Imagine where you could be a year from now, today, if you actually take that first step. Hey loves, do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are tuning into this. It helps grow the show more than you know. Thank you so much again and enjoy. Hello, Brave Table fam. Welcome to another episode of the Brave Table. I'm your host, Dr. Neeta, and this is your destination, your oasis to be all things just a little bit more brave in your actions, in your relationships, and in your life. And I want to be the first to welcome you to 2025. We are here. We have made it. We have landed. I have an affirmation that I would love to begin this episode. I am brave enough to begin again, no matter how certain the path may seem. And one of my other favorites, every step forward is a step toward my next chapter, my next growth and discovery. And finally, I am not starting over. I am starting from experience. So, if you have ever wondered, what if the hardest part of starting over was the best part of your journey, was the best part of your story, was the next chapter that you have been waiting and longing for? This episode is for you. I'm beyond excited to share the biggest news that I've been keeping such a secret for wraps for a very long time, is that the date of this recording, we have officially almost, but we've moved to Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Yes. Exciting. It's terrifying. It's all of the feels in so many ways. And if you've been watching my stories, you'd probably see that I just came back from a 7-week trip from around the world. I was in the Philippines, in Manila, doing my TEDx talk. I was also in Dubai, and we were in India. We were in 7 cities in India, and then back to Dubai, and then Chicago to see my family, and then Austin, Texas. And literally now we are moving officially to Dubai tomorrow. So by the time this releases, we would already be here. And I wanted to start this year on this note because so many of us fear change, and so many of us fear shifts. Right now, if you are watching this on YouTube, if you are new to my channel or even the Brave Table, I just want to welcome you because this is where we brave new frontiers. And sometimes the bravest thing that you can do is admit you are a beginner and start anyway. And as I was thinking about this move and preparing for this conversation, I came across a couple of crazy stats, but why the psychology behind why so many people stay. And of course, for those of you who are new to me, I wrote a best-selling book, a 5-time award-winning book, That Sucked, Now What? Where many times people will stay stuck in old habits and patterns because they fear change so much more. And just think about that. Think about maybe there's somebody in your life. Maybe you're married to this person. Maybe you are friends with this person that you're like, oh my gosh, every year after year, they complain about the same things. They complain why their life isn't going the way that they want. They complain why they aren't where they're supposed to be. But then you see the habits and the patterns and behaviors are not following suit with their desires. And so if that's the case, well, there's nothing, not even this podcast, will change fundamentally what is the core belief about them. They believe that many times change is for other people. They believe many times that change cannot happen to themselves, that they may not be subconsciously deserving of change. And many times they may believe that change or being a beginner again is a weakness. Now, this is golden because as I was reviewing my 2024, and I do this every year, Ajit and I, we sit down, we actually take 2 days. I know some of you have heard about this before where we do a staycation And we actually evaluate. We used to do this every quarter. Now we do this twice a year for one day. We used to do it for 2 days, but then of course, kids, businesses, life, etc. But now we do it and we make sure that we do it once a year, annually at the end of the year. And of course, for our businesses, it's separate, but this is for our life and our relationship. And it's been huge because we evaluate, well, the desires that we have personally, the things that we've accomplished, the things that we failed at, and this is personally. But then we actually look into, well, what were the things that we did as a couple? And for those of you in partnership, for those of you who are parents, for those of you who are working towards building a future together, listen closely because there is nothing sexier, there's nothing juicier than seeing what your partner's visions and dreams are and saying, okay, how can I support that for you this year? And maybe this year I can take a hit, or maybe this year we won't do that thing because I want you to do that thing. And for me, this past year, it was my husband's like, you've been saying for the longest time you want to do a yoga teacher training. And some of you are like, Neeta, I thought you've probably already done this. I know. I'm so all about personal growth and expansion and constantly a forever student. I never thought that I had the time for yoga teacher training. And of course I didn't, but for some way, shape, or form, I made it happen. And it was last year around this time that I said, okay, I'm going to sign up for myself. This doesn't mean that I'm going to go into a tangent. And maybe if I do, great. But this is totally for me. And mamas, you know what that feels like, because after you've literally been the CEO of your family, your life, and literally the planning officer for your family, the social strategist for your family, and all of the ways, what is it that you can do for yourself? Well, for me, it was that. So the first step was signing up for the thing that I was like, oh my gosh, we have these events here. I'm speaking at these events here. How am I going to fit this in? Is it actually realistic? It was not realistic, but that's the thing. When you have a combined vision for the desires that you want and you actually write it down. My family and I, we did this vision boarding exercise over the New Year holiday, and we do this every year. We've been doing it for the last 3 years as a family together, and solo with Ajin and I separately. But now it's a family affair, and so it was very cute because now my son is old enough to understand a little bit more. He's 6, and he understands a little bit more of what kind of goes in his vision board and why that's the case. So his vision board had a lot of toys and beautiful landscape pictures, and honestly, some of those things, you would be surprised. If you are a skeptic on vision boards, you'd be surprised on what falls on the vision board and what actually comes true. And I will share one of those in a moment. But going back to, if you have a vision and if you are sharing that dream with somebody else who wants the best for you, who is a partner, who is like, okay, I would love to see if we can actually make this happen. And he was able to make that happen for me by way of being able to catch the kids, being able to, there were 8 weekends that I had to commit doing a very long yoga teacher training. And for those of you who have committed to it, I salute you, because it is not easy, especially when you have your bucket load of things to do and just the regular things that we are catching all day long. It is not going to be easy. It might actually cause friction. There were times in our relationship this year where Ajit was like, man, I said yes to this and it's totally on me, but it is weighing on me. And so I invite you, when you are creating whatever you want to create in this chapter of your life this year, sit down, brainstorm. You never realize it might happen this year. It might happen in a year from now. And so one of the other things that we asked ourselves last year is, what would be your wildest dream? And this is what I asked Ajit. What would be your wildest dream? And let's just see if we can actually make this happen. And he said, my dream would be to be closer to my parents, because I would love for them to see the grandkids. They're in India. And a lot of times, with travel, it takes them about a day to actually get to the US. And then they don't know the language and they feel really stuck in the house because we live in Texas. So they're not really like walking as much as they are in a big city. And what could that look like? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that led to months and months of planting the seed. And last year, I actually took my beautiful, amazing bonus mama to Dubai after we had spent about 3 weeks in Dubai in over Christmas last year. And I just fell in love. And I grew up going to Dubai as a stopover on my way to India as I was, a teenager in college and growing up doing that. And it was just, it was a very cute city. It reminded me of Vegas back in the day. But then when I went and I really went and took my kids there last year, we totally fell in love and totally fell in love for so many reasons. But we thought, no, this would never, ever in a million years happen. We are so settled here in Austin, Texas. We love our community. The kids love their community. We have an amazing unicorn team, which is our home team at home with our support system that we have. We have our in-person staff that we have here in Texas. Everyone is here. My brother is here. His new fiance is here. Everyone's here. Why would we move? We would never move, but it was a dream. And I share this because be careful what you wish for, because we planted that seed. We came last year, fell in love. We met so many amazing people. There's so many people in our community. Shout out to you all. You know who you are. And there is this idea of so much generosity. And I think it's because of there's predominantly a huge community of Asians, Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Filipinos, Nepalese, Europeans. I mean, it is just this cultural melting pot. There's about 100 nationalities plus in the melting pot of Dubai. It beats any North American city by far. And there is just such a reverence for not only this idea of I want to grow and this hustle mentality of I want to provide not only for my family, and you have all different sets of income brackets there, but the mentality of, wow, what can we create in the last 40 years to put us on the map? And now they are known as the Switzerland of the Middle East, bringing together so many diverse opportunities from, being the most future forward city. Not only that, Abu Dhabi was just named the richest city in the world. So many of the finance sectors are moving there. So many of the, not from cryptocurrency to culture, we have, the Guggenheim, the Met, the Louvre is also now in Dubai. And it has become a global, international city. And we were just so blown away by how tech forward it is, by how generous it is, by how safe it was. And so I took my aunt there for a surprise, not so surprise, because we had to go to India for a family wedding last year in February. And that's when everything kind of changed for me, because the seed that was planted in January by my husband, and the seed was he wanted to be closer to family, it ended up actually being that my bua, who was, she's 75 plus, she's so afraid, and she hasn't been to Dubai in a really long time. And she doesn't typically go out in Chicago. And this is for any of you who have elderly family members. And, things change when they are super active. And then, as they're growing older, we get to see that. And there's a lot of reverence that I have for her, because she still wants to enjoy going out and all of these things, but she couldn't. And for years, she wasn't able to do that because she did not feel safe in Chicago. And when we went to Dubai this past year, I was interviewing, and I had interviewed amazing guests, and I was podcasting for 2 days there. And I said, you know what, we're at this beautiful hotel. You can just stay here. And she's like, no, I'm going to take an Uber, and I'm going to go to this. They have beautiful Miracle Garden. She's into gardens. She took an Uber by herself. And mind you, my bonus mama, my bua, she has a cane, and she was just talking up to the Uber drivers who are Pakistani and Afghani and speaking Urdu, Hindi to them. And they understood. She's also Punjabi, so she spoke Punjabi as well. And they took her to the ATM. They took her to the bank. They took her to the inside of the mall. They took her to get her nails done. I mean, and this was just out of the generosity of their hearts. And I also think because in the Middle Eastern culture, as well as the South Asian culture, there is such a reverence for the elderly. There's such a reverence for elders in general that I think a lot of times in the US, we have just taken for granted. And she felt so safe. And so when I had called her at the end of the day and I said, okay, where are you? Should I meet you at the hotel? I'll pick you up. She's like, no, I've had all of these things to do. I was doing all of these things and I was shocked. And for those of you who have elderly family members and parents, you're probably shocked to hear this because I was so shocked. She felt so safe. She was so excited. She was so happy. She was able to have the freedom that she doesn't necessarily feel while living in a big city like Chicago. And she hasn't felt that way. And there's no knocking Chicago by any means. It hasn't had a good rap for a couple of years, but things have changed in the city. But for her to feel that sort of safety, she speaks very good English. She's been in the US for 40 years. But that reverence of respect and the fact that she could feel safe going into a mall by herself, the fact that she went to an ATM and the bank and, they were just helping her. And so if you've been to Dubai, you get this, you understand what I'm talking about. There is that. And that's one of the things we fell in love with. And so one of the other things that then this seed then started to grow and it started to turn into, well, where do we see ourselves 3 to 5 years from now? And that is a big question we don't ask ourselves enough. And we don't ask ourselves this enough because our vision is limited usually to a 12-month cycle. Most of us, our vision is limited to 6 months. And some of us don't even plan. They just go with the flow and week to week, month to month. I have many of you guys in our communities at Highest Self Institute. And so the real flex is, can you envision what your life, your world could look like 3 to 5 years from now? Where will you be? Who will you be with? Who is the community you want to be with? Who is the community that you want your kids to be around? These were the hard questions that Ajit and I started to ask because my daughter was 2.5 at the time. She's now 3.5. This was a year ago. And my son was 5. And we had asked the hard questions. And many of those answers were pointing us not being in the States for a variety of reasons. And the first reason why we're actually moving is why we decided to move was, number one, family was a huge component for us. And again, in relationships, there's 2 to tango. And I'm so grateful that, Ajit decided for the first 8 years of our relationship that he wanted to be in this side of the world. We both wanted to be in this side of the world. We love being on, the Western side of the world in the US. But I think now, as we have had our 2 kids, they're out of the baby season. Texas had just blessed us with an amazing amount of resources and support and community when we were this was post-COVID when we moved here 4 years ago, January. It afforded us so much just grace and a nest for us to plant ourselves and ground ourselves. But we knew it wasn't going to be our forever place. And so I say this for anybody who is like, oh, wow, you have the travel bug or your husband has a travel bug, but you're like, but I love being nestled. My sun sign is a Cancer. My moon and rising is a Capricorn. So first of all, I love homebody, but I also really love travel and adventure. I have been to, I think it's upwards of 63 countries now and going. And my son has 10 countries under his belt. My daughter has 8 countries under her belt. We're a global trotting family, and that's not going to change anytime soon. And the biggest thing for us was now in this new season, new stage, new era of life, while my babies are not babies anymore, they're grown a little bit. They're in school age. What does that look like? And so I invite this conversation for you to ask yourself, what stage, era, and season of life are you in? Because you may be in a season and stage where you need to nest, where you need to cozy up and be closer to family or goal get and be in that city where it's going to afford you more opportunities, etc. And we decided for us that we wanted to be closer to Ajit's side of the family because we go to India quite a bit. We go to India at least once or twice a year. I was in Dubai twice last year. Even with my family, some of you know, watching stories, I was in Manila, and it was such a beautiful homecoming to see family over there that I hadn't seen since my grandmother and my great aunt had passed 8 years ago. So the first reason was because family is such a high priority on our core beliefs and core values, that proximity to family was going to be a game changer. We would never live in India. However, Dubai was very, very close because India is only a 3.5-hour flight from Dubai. Manila is an 8-hour flight from Dubai. Bali, Singapore, Thailand, Kuala Lumpur, all the places we love on that side of the world is very, very close. So the first reason and the biggest reason was proximity to family. And, as we know, we don't know how much time we have with our loved ones. And there is this beautiful study that came out. It basically kind of did the math on how much time after the age of 18, when your kids move out of the house, how many days or weekends do you have actually with them as you age or as your parents age? And the number was so shocking because I think a lot of times we take it for granted. And now having my own kids, and I see these memes on Instagram, and mamas, you know what I'm talking about. It's the ones that actually make you tear up and cry. And you're like, I only have this much time with them. Oh my goodness. But it's a reality check. It's a reality check to say, let's not wait. Let's not put that off. Let's not say, oh, I'm going to do it when. And, some of my friends, for years, they would make fun of me and say, oh my gosh, you're always doing your vision boards, or you're always planning, 3 to 5 years, 10 years ahead. But that's the long game. I mean, if there's anything that we can learn from, people from different parts of the world, and if, you're into business, it's one of the reasons why the Japanese, they plan for 50 years ahead of the curve, what something's going to look like, and actually reverse engineer that. It's one of the reasons why Dubai has such a great success, because they were thinking, all right, what is this going to look like 30 years? What's my vision 30 to 50 years from now? So to really kind of like bird's eye view, 30,000 foot view and vision of your life, what is that going to look like? Imagine where you could be a year from now, today, if you actually take that first step. That first step. And I'm not saying everyone needs to move to Dubai, but what could that look like? What could that look like? And, the second reason why we moved to Dubai is because of the globalization and the huge cultural exposure. And I know, me being born and raised in Chicago, humongous melting pot. I was born and raised in the city. And so I'm a city girl through and through. But I was so exposed to my neighbors being from different places. I was so exposed to my kid, my brothers and I going to a school where the racial identity of people there's such a huge mixture. Now I feel like in my kids' schools, and there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like, there are only one of brown kids in their school. Nothing wrong with it. And I know some of you are like, well, Neeta, you're in Texas, you're in Austin. I know I'm not in Dallas or Houston, but there is something to say about that, where that was just because we are so global in scope. I wanted my kids to have that exposure. And I wanted my kids to also have that exposure of the full globalization and the diversity that you actually see on full blast in Dubai. Because you have such a huge population of not only Indians, not only Filipinos, not only Europeans, not only Russians and Ukrainians and Emiratis and Lebanese, and the list keeps going on and on and on. And in a lot of the schools that we were looking at, a lot of the schools, many of the schools have 60 plus nationalities in their schools. And the percentage of kids cannot exceed more than 15% of each nationality, which is insane. because they really pride themselves on being globally diverse. And that was really big, and obviously really big for us as a family. The third reason why we chose Dubai and really braving the frontier of moving across the world was the reasons for the future forward, being in a place where the growth of a country is determined by the vision that the leaders set. And now I'm talking about how much growth they've already had as a country, but where they are actually going. And I'm not trying to get into geopolitics over here at all by any means, because I am not an expert by any means. This is just from my own personal experience from being there. So don't hold me to it. However, there is a huge push for so much future forward initiatives there. And we can see that by the number of, there's just an article by the sheer amount of expats moving into the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. I'm going to link that in the show notes. And the largest number of millionaires moving to Dubai as well as entrepreneurs. And that is something because, I think this old adage of you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And the other adage that comes to mind is if you are the tallest person in the room, you got to go find a new room. If you are, the biggest fish, you got to go find another pool to swim in. And I think this is so relevant because oftentimes we try to hold on to relationships and people and things where the expiration date, there was one and it expired, but we try to hold on to it. And in turn, we're not able to grow, or we're not able to increase or grow our capacity to grow and change and shift. And so my invitation for you is, how are you growing this year? What are you willing to expand to your edges, which is uncomfortable? Are you the biggest fish in your community? Who are you learning from? And that's something that, even though Ajit and I have, built companies, we've sold companies, we have written books, and one of the biggest values that we have as a couple and as a family is being growth minded. And in order to be growth minded, we have to ask ourselves the hard questions that sometimes, yes, our families, when we broke the news to them, they were like, you are crazy. No one would ever move. Why would you have any reason to move? You have no reason to move because you're so settled. Why would you move? And so the thing is, and this is a stat that I came across, which is crazy. 1 in 6 people will have never left their hometown. 1 in 6 in the US. Okay, I know it might be different in other places in the world. This is a Pew Research report. About a quarter of US citizens have not traveled internationally. They have not left the country. About a quarter of US citizens have not left the country ever. That is insane. That is insane. The reason why I bring this up is maybe you're willing to stretch yourself this year. Maybe you're willing to do something completely daringly different. Maybe it's not moving across country, but what are you willing to take a hard look at in your own lives, in yourself, where perhaps maybe it's just a seed and you never ever know what you may wish for. It might come true. But I do know that those who are willing to shift and change countries, just like so many of you who listen and watch this podcast and watch this show week after week, so many of our relatives and our ancestors have chosen to move from their birthplace to a new place for new beginnings. Just think about that. And I was reflecting on this because when I had broke the news to my aunt, I'll be honest, she wasn't very happy. She was she was a little bit sad, and she had all of the, forget like the 5 stages of grief. and she's my bonus mom. But the thing is she travels with us from very much across the globe. And we've had her on the Brave Table podcast. I'll link her episode in the show notes. But she was really upset. And I didn't realize how hurt she was and what she had shared. And I got permission to share this on the show. She said, wow, Neeta just really likes doing hard things. Like if she thinks it's easy, then she wants to make it hard to do the hard thing. And with her, very Desi Indian accent. And, I didn't take personal offense to it because I realized, I said, well, yeah, why would we take the easy way out? And I think we've grown so accustomed to wanting things so easy and the ease and flow. And while all of that is great, we have to choose our hard. We have to choose our hard because when we choose our hard, that is actually going to build our character. That's going to build everything that we are working towards. And it will help us weather the storms of any relationship, any financial crisis, any situation. And you all know, for some of you who have been listening to me for years, I've weathered a lot of storms, especially around personal loss. Losing my parents, my brother at a young age, having to leave haphazardly in the middle of the night. Again, this was like one of my anniversaries around the end of the year, because of course it always happens around the end of the year, and stepping into a new life. So change is not so foreign to me anymore. There was a time where it was. There was a time where it was so scary, where, December 31st, 2011, I was so terrified of letting anybody know that I was in a terrible relationship. I was so ashamed. I didn't want anybody to know. And, if you have friends or family members that are like that, just be easy on them because they're just coming out of their shell and it'll take them time. But when you're on the other side of that, oh man, you will fly forward and you will be so prone to your resiliency meter. That capacity for resilience is going to be so strong. Because if I can share the amount of stress and havoc on our nervous systems that it has taken to move our entire family, our businesses, our financial setup, our team, all the way across the world and completely start brand new in a place where, yes, we know a few people, we have some sort of a community, but to be eager and to be so excited to embrace the unknown, that is the journey. That is choosing your hard. And in that choosing your hard, my friends, that is the juicy aspects. Because yes, there will be ups and downs, just like anything else. There will be ups and downs. There will be, I think of it as one of my kids got a Slinky for Christmas. And he loves the Slinky. I don't know why. It's like the easiest thing, but he loves it. He doesn't like any of his AI computer robotics toys or whatever. He loves this Slinky and he's been playing with it all over the place. But as you take a Slinky, right, you pull it apart and it kind of uncoils. But then if you stretch it out too much, it's going to recoil. It's going to come back to that little shape. And the thing is we want to be able to allow ourselves to expand to where there is discomfort, but it's not so stretched out where we'll just recoil back to the same place. Because when it recoils, it has still that give and it's stretched out enough where, all right, it can handle a little bit more stretching. That's what we need to think about. That, yeah, there's going to be some bumps in the road. Nothing is easy. But what is that person? Who is that person that I'm becoming? So we've already talked about the first 3 reasons. Now, the 4th reason is, well, Dubai has now become this birthplace of entrepreneurship and personal growth and personal development and spiritual growth has been having a day over there. And it has been so incredibly exciting to watch from a health standpoint, from a biohacking standpoint, and from full wellness end to end. And I think it's so exciting to see when we can now expand all the work that we've been doing here in the US for the last 8 years now over to a place where, is closer to our roots. And that is really, really exciting. And number 5, I think I've already shared this, but we love traveling. I think Ajit and I alone have gone to about 35 cities, maybe even 40 at this point. I've lost complete count. I know we've at least been to 20 countries together. And finally, why we chose Dubai: for safety and actual ease of quality of our lives. Ease of life. Well, because, Ajit and I don't really have a big family here, we are able to get so much of a support system and team, home team, a unicorn team, as my dear girlfriend Jennifer Kem calls it, that we've so graciously built here, but to be able to have that built over there in Dubai. And the fact that it's so safe for our kids, so safe in, where they're going to be going to school and where we're living, I think that has a mental model and value system for us internally that we didn't realize how important that was. And so I ask you this: what are your intentions for 2025? What is your word? Have you picked a word? I was thinking about my words for this year, and I'm still brewing on it because, well, I'm in this full transition period. And maybe it is transition and integration. And that's what maybe in my heart of hearts, that's what's been coming up. Transition to explore other possibilities and be curious and open to what is going on in the journey. I think the curiosity to be able to make mistakes, to be able to fail, to be able to throw things at the wall and see what happens, and honestly to be a beginner again. I think that was one of the biggest lessons I took in 2024, how much I loved being that student and beginner. And for those of you who didn't know this, I also got my Astrology 101 certification from Deborah. And I think mamas, when our kiddos are doing their own thing, it gives us permission to really go all in and rediscover who we are in this stage and era of our lives in motherhood. And what a beautiful gift that is to give to ourselves. So here's the affirmations I will leave for you. And if you have thought of your word for this year, I would love for you to share it in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. And my request is, if you are listening to this, wherever you are listening to this, if you can just hit the follow button, the like button, the subscribe button. I know that everything that we've been doing for you all in the last literally almost 3 years has been giving you so much value. And it is my honor to take this up a notch this year. And my only ask is if you can go on YouTube. We're trying to grow our channel. We're trying to hit 10,000 subscribers. If you can hit the follow button or the subscribe button and leave a comment below on this video. We're starting the year strong. We are doing things and experimenting on things that we've never, ever, ever done before. And I would just love your support. So if you can do that, it would be such an honor. And if you haven't already, you can leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. That would help us grow the show more than you know. But here are some of my favorite affirmations for you. I am brave enough to begin again, no matter how certain the path may seem. I release what no longer serves me and welcome what is meant for me. I am not starting over. I am starting from experience. I am worthy of fresh starts, new opportunities, and limitless possibilities. Being a beginner is a sign that I am expanding and evolving. I love you all. Thank you so, so much for being part of this growing community. Wish me all the luck in the world as I get my 2 kids in a brand new school, brand new part of the world, brand new home. And I'll be doing more of these in the other side of the world. I will see you there. Thank you so, so much for being part of this community. And don't forget to be just a little bit more brave. I will see you soon.